Introducing the first of its kind, the new SwissBorg Meta Exchange. Multi-chain execution. Any crypto, any fiat, to any token. Trade freely across chains. Solana, Avalanche, and more to come. SwissBorg Meta Exchange. Multi-chain, cross-chain, no limits.
What's up, Borgers? How's everyone doing? Can we see some of those?
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Very happy to see you.
Which heart should we be doing, Nicolas? We should be doing the European one, the Japanese one, or the Korean one? Which one? All three?
Oh, I think we should do them all. you seem set for the new dance here, Alex.
Most definitely. I'm super excited to be with everyone here tonight. By the way, guys, I didn't manage to put my daughter to sleep just to be with you. So if I can see as many hearts and green hearts as possible, just to share back the love, that would be really appreciated. How are you, Nico, tonight?
I'm terrific. Looking very good and excited about sharing this news again.
Absolutely. And it's been really a short amount of time, right, Nicolas? What's happening? It took us 1.5 years to, scale Solana. We're already scaling Avalanche and we're already up to the next chain. Why are things moving so fast these days?
Yeah, I feel like we're getting into something that all the team is getting used to trading on chain. There is more and more chains that got the message from Solana that increasing bandwidth and reducing latency was a good thing. And so there is more and more possibilities now. We have a chain that are getting more performance. There is a lot of ecosystem that are blooming. And so, yeah, there is opportunities for SwissBorg.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Nicolas. And before we start, guys, I want to send a big shout out and lots of love to our dear engineering team. Because Nicolas, as you know, right, I'm just here to talk. I'm not the one who's been working every single day, from morning to nights to get all this integration done. So lots of love to all our wonderful devs and engineers, right, Nico?
Yeah, 100%. You might not realize, but, we're close to 100 engineers, and there is a lot that is happening behind the scenes. And enabling what the smart engine from SwissBorg is doing is a massive amount of work in engineering, right? So this is unique, and it's for a purpose. It's for a reason, right? It's that it's difficult to pull out.
Absolutely, Nicolas. And as you said, 100 engineers, plus with the data scientists, right? We must be, 130, 140 at the moment in terms of engineering?
Yeah, something around those lines, absolutely.
Yeah, so big shout out, guys. And for those who missed the previous session, when we talked about the Avalanche integration, we started talking about this narrative, which is the multi-chain MEX. And the reason why we call ourselves a meta exchange, once again, is because we're a layer on top of the exchanges. Is that correct, Nicolas, technically speaking?
Yes. So it's just that we're abstracting away all the liquidities and all the trading system, so that there is a lot of fragmentation in the space, because there is a lot of people that want to enable trading of crypto, right? And this means that from a user standpoint, it's getting complicated because of that fragmentation. And here we are making an aggregation of all that and making it completely abstract. So you have a very seamless experience when using the SwissBorg app, where you can decide what's the asset you want to swap from to. And in a single click, everything is happening by kind of magic, right? And that's the kind of experience that we love to deliver to our community.
Absolutely. And for those who do not necessarily understand perfectly the technicalities of a meta exchange, so layer on top, plus being multi-chain, Cyrus, Marco, as you remember, Anthony, back in the good old days, Nicolas, we always talked about trying to become the NASDAQ 2.0. And for those here who are new to the NASDAQ concept, obviously, many of you know that the NASDAQ is the second largest stock market in the world. But the difference it had between the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ itself was that the NASDAQ aggregates multiple markets. As of today, it has 29 markets. And it also connects to the London Stock Exchange. It connects to Scandinavian exchanges. So it's not just the New York Stock Exchange, which only delivers American stocks or companies that register in the United States. So you can understand already, guys, the concept. And actually, NASDAQ is an acronym, which means National Association of Securities Dealers. So from the get-go, we can see that they were aggregating dealers and brokers in order to create an electronic system where you can execute all these trades. So for the lack of a better analogy, that's what we went for first, Nicolas. But does it make a little bit sense to you on how we try to call ourselves a NASDAQ 2.0?
Yeah, 100%. That definitely makes sense.
Awesome. So, guys, without further ado, let's do a recap of where we're at today. So, with the Meta Exchange, thanks to the recent integrations of Nicolas and our amazing engineering team, now we have 16 fiat currencies. We have 3 chains. We have 5 sexes. And now we went from 8 to 12 dexes since the last live stream. So that's a lot of work from the engineering side. And just for those who missed the previous stream, there were some very important points that we talked about. And Nicolas, I'll let you comment in a second. But if you guys do not understand what is the problem we're trying to solve at SwissBorg, you'll hopefully understand it by using a pizza analogy. And this pizza analogy is essentially talking about the value accrual and the value flywheel that we have in the Web3 industry. And as you guys can see here, unfortunately, there is one player, one actor that is eating too much of this pizza. He's taking almost half, even more than half of this pizza. And that player or those players are the centralized exchanges. And we'll explain why in a second. But then you have another big slice that's being taken away by some of the VCs or market makers. The dApps and the DEXs have a very small piece of pizza. Poor guys. So if you have, for example, let's say SUI, 90% of SUI trading volume is going to be on the centralized exchanges and not on the dApps or the DEXs where it's supposed to be. So poor and small little piece of pizza for dApps and DEXs, and a slightly bigger piece of the pie for blockchains. Now, Nicolas, any comments on this? Does it make sense to you to talk about the current state of the Web3 markets?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. It's like that kind of like really reflects the reality and what I see as well.
Absolutely. And so the dream of SwissBorg, can you explain, Nicolas, a little bit? This is what we currently have in the markets. And what are you trying to do with all this amazing technology with the multi-chain MEX to kind of, level off the playing field?
Yeah, so what we're trying to reconnect is directly going on chain so that we can get direct visibility about what's going on and trying to understand. This week has been particularly kind of like stressful in the market, and we see a lot of movement in traditional finance. But you also see that basically as just a normal citizen that is not connecting and doesn't have insights within like Wall Street firms, it's very difficult to get any kind of information, right? Because nothing's public. So you see rumors that are on Twitter or whispers in the streets and stuff, but it's impossible to see. While on the other hand, when there is always stress, markets in financial markets that are on chain, you can properly understand what is going on. And I would say we went through various episodes of stress through the years, and each time all that visibility kind of was leveling the field because everyone was playing at the same level, right? And so we see that it's very healthy to kind of make everyone capable of accessing the same amount of data and having the same chance in participating in a system, right? Because if it's in a blockchain, you're not gonna get a special actor that has some privilege that are going to be extremely unfair compared to anybody else. And so we can really compete at the same level and deliver the best outcome. And so it makes complete sense that like, the spot market evolves more and more towards being on chain and aware from like private pools, centralized exchange, and having all those data taken away from everybody. And so this is what we're pushing for. And with our exchange, then like all those blockchain are interconnected seamlessly and making everything available in a single click.
Yep, absolutely. It's very well said. And by the way, Nicolas, many people are saying, "Who's eating the last slice? I'm hungry." We're seeing a lot of comments on the pizza here. We have a lot
Everybody
of
likes
people.
a pizza.
Thanks so much. Future Pizza looks bright. Yes, it does, Harry. It does, brother. So if you guys want a specific example of what we mean here on how to redistribute, how to balance the value flywheel, let's have a look at the next slide here, guys. So when a project approaches a centralized exchange, this is what happens as of today. There's a listing fee when they want to get listed. Number two, there's a security deposit, and the security deposit essentially says if when you list or launch your token with us, if the token drops below a certain average, we take that money back. So you will pay, let's say, $300,000 to $500,000 for listing fee. Which, by the way, do you know how much it is, Nicolas, to list on the New York Stock Exchange, the biggest stock exchange in the world?
I don't know, but I imagine it's a bunch of money.
150K USD.
Oof.
So the exchanges in crypto are charging more than the biggest stock exchange in the world, which is crazy, right?
That is crazy. That is crazy. I wouldn't have thought so.
Can you imagine that? All the pizza they're eating, Nicolas, it's not fair, right?
This is not an efficient system.
This is not an efficient system. Then, guys, the projects, they pay a security deposit, which is less funny. And this is even worse. Then the centralized exchanges are going to ask for a percentage of your token supply. And I was just talking to Nicolas earlier. I know 3 projects, and I cannot name them because there's going to be political problems out there. And the projects are afraid to share this live because they may get delisted if they spread these type of rumors, because it makes the sexes look bad. But because we don't care, we can tell you that exchanges as of today, even in this market, will take between 3 to 10% of your total token supply. Do you remember what you said, Nicolas, about being a founder and what the exchanges are taking? Do you mind sharing that with the community?
Yeah,
You told me earlier.
I remember very well. And so we were discussing with Alex, and basically the percent of token supply for the project that he mentioned and the data that we have, it was like basically the same cut as like being like what I usually see in benchmark as like being the founder of a project. So it's just that like, it's very unfair. It's just that like they create that private ecosystem, and then it's kind of like, a tax that everybody need to pay to be able to enter the market. And if you have that, you'll never gonna get like, the dream of the blockchain and the open world, because it's very closed and it's extremely expensive to enter it. And so, of course, like the success of crypto is not going to be something that like is aligned with everybody, because it means that like one of the participants is going to be extremely advantageous and is going to take like most of the money out of the system. It makes that like crypto as an industry can't progress. And obviously that is an issue.
Absolutely, Nicolas. And you just said something that I need to repeat, guys, before we go to the next slide. Did you hear what Nicolas said? He said that the centralized exchanges, by taking 5 to 10% of the token supply, are receiving, generally speaking, the same amount as the co-founding team. Can you imagine that? Just for a listing, guys. So that's crazy. So if the project goes to $200 million market cap, that means if they take 5%, you guys do the math, that's $10 million for a listing. Especially if it's ERC20 or some sort of basic format, I'm sure that doesn't cost even more than $10,000, $15,000, right, Nicolas? Like technically to get the devs to list.
No, it doesn't. So after I do get it, because like, this is now like a major difference when like you're listing on chain, is that like when you're listing on centralized exchange, there is a lot of manual process, because like you're gonna need to document everything, find the market maker, and organize the market. And that's like kind of very different, where like capital formation on chain can happen very fast, and we've seen all that happening in December with memes.
Yeah.
And while I do get it that like a lot of people got grumpy after it because they said like, oh, memes, they have no value, I do believe that like what we saw, you need to see the light behind that, right? You need
Yes.
to see that like the speed at which capital was formed and at which a market was established was better than like what centralized exchange do, and was extremely fast and independent. And a lot of the meme got some love because there was no extraction coming from a centralized exchange and gating everything and coordinating the market in their favor. So meaning that like a community could benefit from it.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And really, really well said. And guys, just to give you one last example. So this is what we're solving at SwissBorg with the multi-chain MEX, or what we call the NASDAQ 2.0. So the issues that we have today with the SEX and the private order books, it impacts projects in many, many ways. So you can see a list here below. You have absurd listing fees, which we just talked about, which includes the listing, the security deposit, and the percentage of your token supply. There's also zero transparency, which I know, Nicolas, you hate, because there's tons of wash trading. Probably more than half of it is wash trading. Price manipulation, and that is when they run their own market makers and they manipulate the price. And then there's hidden fees, the spread and the slippage, which we've been talking about for a very long time, right, Nico, where most people don't
Yeah, very
realize
long time.
that they're paying big fees without realizing it. And then, of course, guys, when you have a project that wants to list on 4 or 5 sexes, you can imagine that that fragments the liquidity because it's a private gate. And on top of that, you multiply your fees with market making. But is there anything to say other than that, Nicolas, about the issues of having a sex and a private order book?
That kind of like sum up everything, right? But I would say like, with the downfall of FTX, we also learned that like Alameda was having a different access to the book than everybody else. And like without having full transparency, we'll never be able to have enough trust to be sure that like those kind of practices don't exist.
Amazing. And Nicolas, so you see here in green what we're trying to achieve with the MEX, which is slightly different, of course, from the DEXs, where you can just list freely, but at the same time, you can also list scams. There's no curation. But are these in green the major points that we're trying to solve that sexes cannot?
Yeah. So, I mean, as we said, it's like despite everything that we said that was very positive by like putting the liquidity on chain. Now various ecosystem exist, and we love them all because like they're pushing decentralization and have like a different approach and different go-to markets. And it's the same thing of like, there are cars and there's plenty of manufacturers because they specialized in different ways and they have like all their different like pros and cons and different trade-offs, right? And so in the blockchain world, it's a bit the same thing where like there is always going to be multiple blockchains. But now then there is the issue that there is fragmented liquidity and you can have like a token that you love in one space and then in another one. And how do you go from one to the other, right? And so this is the kind of things that like we are very good and that like we completely abstract away, because once you evolve within the SwissBorg ecosystem, then all our engine, all our expertise is about managing that liquidity and making that trade smooth.
Amazingly put, Nicolas. And I want to share some love to Jess, to Emerson Joe, to Bolan, to Alex Philippe, to Seb, to Bernard Ferland, to Tienu. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us with all these beautiful green hearts. Can we see more green hearts, guys? Woo!
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Okay, Nicolas, the next slide is your favorite. It's the one we talked about last time, but I think you framed it so well that we need to re-explain this again on what you talked about open source and the philosophy and how decentralized is SwissBorg relative to a SEX, and how is it a little bit more centralized than a DEX?
Yes. So as you all know, Nicolas, I'm SwissBorg CTO. And before doing SwissBorg, I participated a lot in open source and worked a lot as a software engineer. And when we look at the history of software engineering, we go back, I would say, let's just go back to the 80s. To the 80s, what there was is that there were a lot of companies doing their own computer and having all vertically integrated. So they had their OS, their CPU, their thing. So that evolved, but then it created a system where well, you just had to have private discussion with the sales and then have the stuff and then read manual to understand what there was, but it was never kind of something you can really hack on. And so then there was that movement of hackers that started and created open source. And that was a new concept that happened in the 80s and then exploded in the 90s, right? With the birth of Linux. And what appeared was that something that was beautifully designed didn't win against the bazaar of Linux, where everyone was contributing something. And that created a sheer force that kind of completely destroyed those monopoly and vertically integrated platforms. And that capacity of innovation, of tinkering with things, of innovation, that is something that we want to see also happen in that space. And that's the thing that when we look at private liquidity pools, at private system, you can't build the same way as what is happening. And I would say, we can look at the history of blockchain, but Solana, is hardly 5 years old max. And when we look at what it was in the previous cycle and where they are now, it's the changes are tremendous. The capacity, Solana is still oh yeah, it's that chain that crash and has to restart. Yeah, but it hasn't been more than a year and a half. And look at the throughput that they've been able to put. It's 10x. Look at the stability of the chain production. Of now they have 3 code base of validation that is coming online, and so on and so forth. And that is just in the space of just few years. So project that in 10, 20 years, right, is going to be insane, the situation that we are going to be in. And this morning I had conversation with other foundation and stuff, and kind of got to see a glimpse of what's going to come with next generation blockchain. It's just insane. And so what I see is that private order book and private liquidity are really going to an end. And when we see this verticality, in a sense of there is this one company that have the private order book, and then they create their own chain and give you a sense of that's crypto. It's actually not, because it's closed source. So all those chains are always going to be within their realm and full control, and they're never going to kind of foster innovation and foster things that could challenge them.
Fantastically put.
Yeah.
Keep going, Nico. Keep going.
No, that's it. It's just that we want to see crypto is something that has been started as a movement for a finance that is community owned, and it should stay this way. And
You're
this is what we
absolutely
want
right.
to see.
You're absolutely right. And if for those who, obviously there are a lot of technicalities here, but for those to understand, essentially, is rather than financializing everything and trying to own everything, like a company owning their own blockchain, owning their own wallets, owning their own validators, owning their own dApps, what Nicolas is essentially saying, guys, is the way SwissBorg is doing it, because we could run our own chain. We could build our own DEXs, but it's very important to build Legos on top of the other Legos. And that's what open source is made of. And I think what you're saying here, Nicolas, on top of our on-chain execution, which is the only one that really does it properly from FX to SEX to DEX, we have the philosophy of a real open source economy. Is that correct, Nicolas? Where we're building on top of the work of others, and we're collaborating and partnering with these people.
Exactly. So you remember your first slide that you put, where you put the number of chains, the number of DEX that we've integrated and stuff. And every single time, we go talk to those teams, and we find ways to collaborate.
Fantastic.
It's an effort of like working together, and it's not like we are trying to extract away from them. We are trying to bring value.
Exactly. That's very, very well put. And we're going to kind of cruise through the next slides really quickly because we're a little bit behind time. We have some special guests waiting for us. But essentially, Nicolas, I can pretty much say that with Solana, we did a pretty decent job, right? Over 100 tokens listed, over $1.7 billion of on-chain volume, $8.5 million funded to Solana projects. It was a pretty good first case study, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I know that like some people found that like, oh, there's starting to be a lot of token on SwissBorg, right? But the point is that like we're evolving in a sense of like our point is to make all the investments that are possible available in SwissBorg. And then you'll be up for some surprise about how we see this in the future and evolve so that like, you know, you can get like help figuring out what's of value and navigating that space.
Absolutely. And here, guys, you can see some stats also from the Avalanche ecosystem. So we've integrated, as you know, 4 dexes for Avalanche to get the best prices for you guys and to make making the DeFi life much easier. But without further ado, I think everyone here today, Nicolas, is here to figure out what is the next chain.
Yeah, some people figured it out. They were like, "Oh, the color! I could guess there on the color."
Some people figured it out. I think we gave it out with the color, unfortunately. By the way, just wanted to send a shout out to Cyril, to Laurent, to Antoine, to Crypto Hampshire, to Prince Vegeta, to Abel. Thank you so much for joining in. We're close to 1,000 people in the live stream. Let's try to hit the 1,000 mark. But without further ado, Nicolas, is it time to reveal the new chain?
Yes, let's go, Alex. Let's go.
Go, baby.
I so much want to say it.
SwissBorg Metro Exchange. Multi-chain, cross-chain, no limits.
Nicolas, who did we add? Who did we add?
Yeah, we're with the Berachain, guys. That's very cool. Berachain is very unique, as we're going to see later on. There is a lot of very particular elements. And I see a lot of people putting in the comments that like adding some of the guesses. As we said, we're going multi-chain. Huh? Like a lot of like your guess, you know, might come after that. So don't be disappointed. We're working on it. Tonight is the special guest from Berachain, and we're very excited about that.
And before we bring the guests in, guys, so just a recap of what we've done until now. You can remember that the first step here in this beautiful DeFi city was connecting 5 of the major exchanges. The second step was the Solana ecosystem, as you can see, with all its dexes. Then it was Avalanche with 4 of its major dexes. And we're very happy to say that today we're integrating Berachain with 2 of its major dexes, which is Bex and Kodiak. So without further ado, we're going to bring the guys in, and this is what the MEX is looking like today. Now, if we can bring, actually, let's just do one more slide, and then we'll bring the guys in. But just to give you guys an example of what would happen today, Nicolas, you remember you asked me to create essentially what the average DeFi user would have to do a cross-chain transaction that we're going to demonstrate right now, right?
Yes.
And so, guys, for those out there who don't realize how powerful this is if you had a Solana token and you wanted to go from SVM, which is a Solana chain, to Berachain, which is an EVM-compatible chain, you would first, in your first step, have to download and manage a Web3 wallet, like Phantom, for instance. You would need to buy SOL for the gas fees. You'd need to swap your SOL to USDC on a DEX in order to, step 2, bridge your tokens, for example, on Wormhole or Layer 0, the most popular bridges. And then after you bridge these tokens from Solana, you would need a second wallet, which is MetaMask EVM compatible wallet. You'd have to download that. You have to manage the keys, of course. You need to buy ETH for your gas fees, and then you would receive your USDC coming from the bridge. And then step 4, it gets even longer. Then you go from your MetaMask and you would bridge across the Berachain bridge. And in this case, you bridge USDC or USDT, which goes to USDTO. And then you need to buy Bera for gas fees and then receive your USDC. And once you're in the Berachain ecosystem, you would have to, step 5, connect to Kodiak or connect to Bex in order to swap your USDC to, let's say, Bera, or let's say a more exotic token like Ramen, or in the future, the Kodiak token. So guys, look at this. If you go from these 5 steps from start to finish, it would take you roughly at least 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how many fees you want to pay for the first bridge. Plus, you would have to do 2 transactions. Then you would have to pay another bridge gas fees times 2, and that would take you roughly 10 to 15 minutes. So it would take you at least 30 minutes to go from SVM to Berachain to buy your Berachain ecosystem token. And that is imagining that you already have Solana on your Phantom wallet, you already have ETH on your MetaMask wallet, and you have Bera on your Berachain wallet. So, or on your MetaMask, with the Berachain extension. So, Nicolas, that's a pretty daunting and scary route, right? Because
exactly, it's like it's all a journey, right? You want to do that, and it's what I say. It's like blockchains are, their own part of the city, and we need to interconnect it. And so it's complicated journey as a user, because you need to know all those projects, all those techs and stuff. And here with SwissBorg, you have like all those investment universe at your fingertips.
Beautifully put. And if this is too complicated for you guys, because it's late at night, essentially it's very similar to when you're traveling and you're having to connect flights. You're going to have to stop at another airport to take another flight to another airport, and then potentially even take a boat to an exotic island like Phuket or something with a beautiful beach in order to buy an exotic token, like, for example, Ramen. And so what SwissBorg is doing for you guys essentially is making DeFi like a walk in the park. So everything, all these beautiful DeFi worlds feel like they're all interconnected, all in the same city, and you can just walk from one building to the other. So without further ado, can we bring in our dear Berachain fam into this group chat? All right.
Hey.
Hello, Joestar.
Hello, everybody.
All right. Look at this.
BM, guys. How we doing?
How you doing, guys? How you doing, Captain Jack Barrow?
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Joestar, ça va?
Ça va super bien. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much for coming. So guys, today we have 3 very important people in this chat. So we have Captain Jack and Barrow, who is directly with the support team. We have content creator with Joestar. And then last but definitely not least, we have Berachain, who is a part of the Kodiak Finance team, which is a DEX. So we'll be able to give you guys 3 perspectives on why Berachain matters. But before we do that, Captain Jack Barrow, Berachain, and Joestar, I would love to show you. You'll be the first ones here all together to see the execution go from cross-chain, but also FX to the Berachain. Are you gentlemen ready? Here we go. So the first execution here is going to be, as you guys can see, we're going to buy the Ramen token, and we're going from the Solana chain. So SVM to EVM. So when we execute the order here, guys, let's see, the execution goes through. Boom. And then, Nicolas, can you comment on what kind of route it took to go from Helium to...
Yeah, so if you could stop it here, perfect, like we can see. So, Helium is a token that lives on Solana. And so that was traded on Orca, that's a Solana DEX. And then there were 2 steps on centralized exchange to get to Bera. And then from Bera, we've been able to go to the Ramen token. And so That's kind of like took 6 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. And all the journey that Alex was showing you regarding the bridge and all the stuff where you had to use so many tools, here within one app and in 6 seconds, you get everything done.
Captain Jack Barrow, is that pretty cool?
Extremely cool. Yeah. Fast finality, cross-chain swaps, good tech, good UX. We like it.
Thank you so much, brother. And we have one more to show you, actually. Hopefully you'll like it as well. It's the first time that the community will be seeing this. But we're going to go from FX this time.
And yeah, here in 3 seconds, we went from Swiss franc. And so doing like the execution from Swiss franc to USDT, USDT to Bera, and then Bera to Ramen, all in 3 seconds. So you can on and off ramp to any token on Berachain seamlessly in just a matter of a few seconds.
So Bera Rodman,
pretty cool, guys.
We need to do this for the Kodiak token as well, right?
Kodiak has not quite TG'd yet, but in the near future, you'll be able to. So I have a quick question, guys. If you're a new user on SwissBorg, do you have to have the underlying SEX accounts too, or is this kind of handled for you?
You don't need to open any kind of account. You just open your SwissBorg account and that's it. And you're all set.
Incredible. And so if you're a user, essentially you benefit from the spreads or the rates on each and every SEX if the route is better, correct?
That's right. So it's just that like here, I could make multiple execution and we're going to see that like the path that is taken is most of the time is going to be different. Because we also have like a Forex venue. And so, you can make like a CHF euro somewhere to on-ramping. So it could be with USDC or something like that. And yeah.
And so the cool thing here, Rodman, is with SwissBorg, obviously, because we're going to aggregate on-chain and on Kodiak. So if you guys have LP pools for your own token, let's say you put Kodiak and you LP it with Bera or Kodiak Honey or Kodiak USDC once the native USDC is coming on-chain, essentially, rather than paying crazy fees to get listed, you can make money by getting listed on SwissBorg, especially you guys because you're running the DEX, right? So you get the transaction for all exchanges, but the transaction fees, but you also for your own token, because you'll be managing your own LP pools, will make money out of that depending on what spread you guys choose. So the listing game has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible stuff, guys. Incredible.
Awesome. So once again, guys, for everyone watching out there, so we've integrated Bex and Kodiak, which have deep liquidity on Berachain. And today we have some amazing guests. You guys have the chance to meet them. So we're going to kick off with a quick overview of Berachain and ecosystem for all you amazing Borgers out there, so that you can understand, the basics of what is Berachain, why they're doing it, what makes them different. Captain Jack Barrow, do you want me to put the slide and let you navigate it for us?
Sure. Thank you very much.
The floor is yours, brother.
I appreciate it. So I'll make an assumption here. Maybe I'm wrong. I apologize if I am. The folks here are familiar with proof of stake blockchains. And generally speaking, Berachain is just an extension of proof of stake. And so by default, we actually are very, very close to Ethereum's vision, right? We actually use unmodified Ethereum execution clients. Even when you're looking at most L2s or Alt L1s, they're normally making modifications to the Ethereum clients. The benefit of this is we are able to make upgrades as Ethereum does it as part of their core upgrades. And so when Pectra goes live in just under a month here, we'll be able to benefit from that shortly thereafter. And in this universe where, you can think of a blockchain as if we're really, really going to distill it down to its bare essence, what is a blockchain's value? It's like the value of a blockchain is how many blocks does that chain produce? And what is the average economic value of those blocks? And that's like the simplest possible way to put it. And most chains are really focused on how do I make more blocks? How do I make the blocks go faster? How do I make them cheaper? And that's good, right? And Berachain is fast, high throughput. It's extremely low cost. We think that's important too. But there's also trade-offs, right? At some point, making your chain go a little bit faster or go from being 1,000th of a cent to 100,000th of a cent isn't that big of a deal. And what really matters is developing better systems and better blockchain economics. And that's really where we're focused on things with proof of liquidity and Berachain. And so to start off, if you compare proof of liquidity to a normal proof of stake network, a normal proof of stake network, validators produce blocks. They receive a block reward for doing so. That block reward goes to the validator. If it's a liquid staking token, then the liquid stakers get the block reward. And that's it, right? That system works for validation of the network, but a big problem with this by default is that validators aren't actually incentivized to contribute to the things that actually drive growth of the network, which are applications. So builders like Berachain, that is on the call, and many others in the Berachain ecosystem, as well as users like all of the people listening here. And Berachain's thesis was that you should actually prioritize users and applications first and foremost. And so by default, that chain inflation, those block rewards, go to users and applications first. They go to applications, who then distribute them to users. And validators should get paid based off of demand for the network. And so if you look at the proof of liquidity flywheel here, the way that it generally works is users are providing liquidity into an application. By providing liquidity into an application, that application is able to grow and scale and onboard new users and develop some product market fit. In exchange for doing that, they receive BGT, or Bearer Governance Token. That's the inflation token of the network. And so all of the new inflation of the chain, in the same way that ETH has ETH inflation, and that's where your yield on your staking tokens come from, Berachain's is in BGT. Users can then delegate that BGT to validators. As they delegate BGT, they receive a portion of the validator's revenue that is being generated. This flywheel allows for deeper liquidity based off of that liquidity provision. It allows for the network to scale based off of the delegation. More users are onboarded. They want to continue participating in proof of liquidity. They want more BGT to be able to participate in that revenue sharing with validators, because it's this fair launch token. There's no insiders or VCs on BGT. It's purely free market. And so they provide more liquidity to get it, which creates a nice flywheel. It's, of course, slightly more nuanced than that, but I think this is the very simple version.
That is very, very cool. Very, very cool. And, when I see this, like Captain Jack Barrow, like the first thing I think that caught the attention of most people reading the Bitcoin white paper was its incentive economy, right? The incentive model. And it's very complicated, right? To get these things really well balanced out, to make it feel like everyone is being rewarded fairly, right? It must have been quite a headache, right? To get this right. How was it?
It was an iterative process and remains an iterative process. It was definitely not something, this has been something that's been getting built in public since spring 2022. And so you can actually go back onto governance forums from the time. And if you look at proof of liquidity, you'll see that the core tenets and the ethos and the mission of what it was trying to accomplish is the same. But the implementation was very, very different, because at the time, there were a lot of things in vogue. And there were a lot of design decisions that were something that, a $50 million chain that was early on in its inception could get away with, like an algorithmic stablecoin. But when you're building for a much larger scale, you have to decide where you want to take risk off the table. And so now the stablecoin is fully collateralized, fully redeemable. Nothing's being done with the collateral even, right? It's as simple, as transparent as possible. And we really just laser focused in on the economic alignment portion that was really the core goal of the chain. But this is also something that, you know, we're constantly working on an ongoing basis. In the 3 weeks or 4 weeks since proof of liquidity launched, we've already made meaningful changes to governance to make the system more fair and more transparent. And we've, you know, I think this is something that you guys will probably understand well, especially Nicolas, having been kind of on the tech side. The second you ship something, you immediately know it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I had done these 5 things as well. And you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. And so, you know, the second we shipped proof of liquidity, we instantly sat down and we're like, all right, well, we also want to have these 5 things work better and improve these 2 things. And so we immediately started working on kind of what V2 would look like. And let's call it V1.1 upgrades will be going out next week already as well. And so we're really trying to make sure that we're constantly shipping upgrades to the system and improving the experience for users and applications all the time.
Awesome. And since we were talking about the incentive, you know, model itself, you also wanted me to put this slide up for you to explain the incentive diagram. Would you like to run through this, Captain Jack Barrow?
Sure. I'll try and make it as kind of simple as possible, because I recognize this diagram can be a little bit confusing. And so, you know, folks can work through this diagram if they want. I'll explain it a little bit simpler even probably than this. But in Berachain, there's basically 3 types of users. There are end users, like most of the people listening to the call. There are applications, which are people building applications on the Berachain network. And there are validators, who are those that secure the network, that have stake for economic security, that are validating blocks. And each of those people works directly with each of the other people. Everyone has a single kind of exchange of value with one of the other folks. And this is very different, like I mentioned earlier, to a normal proof of stake chain, where the value exchange happens between users and applications, right? Like users provide liquidity and use applications, and applications reward them for doing so. And validators kind of just sit off to the side unbothered. They say, I get paid. Look, I get paid no matter what happens on the usage side. I don't really care. And what we really did was we tried to combine those things. And so by default, Berachain has 2 tokens, and this is already very different than most other chains. And the reason for this was that if you separate out roles and responsibilities into different tokens, you can actually make each more efficient in its separation. And so, you know, if you try and have a token that does 15 things at once, it'll end up doing all 15 of those things not very well. Versus if you have tokens that have really focused roles and responsibilities, you can build a lot more thoughtful design into each of those tokens. And so Berachain's Bera token, which is kind of the core token of the chain, is the gas token and the stake token, the same way every other L1 blockchain has. And as I mentioned earlier, BGT, or Bera governance token, is what I would think of as the inflation token. And so that's what all new issuance happens in. And so that would be normally reserved for the same token in the traditional model. It's also the rewards token. And so it's the token that if you delegate to a validator, you are able to earn revenue share. And so if we kind of break down the roles and responsibilities, validators want to work with users to get Bera for stake, as that influences how often they win blocks, right? So it's like a proof of stake model. As well as they want to get Bera governance token, BGT, from users, because that influences the size of the blocks that they win. And so as a result, like that directly determines their profitability. Validators also work with applications to exchange the blocks that they win. Remember, because by default, those blocks have to go to applications. And so they have kind of like a deal-making capacity, and they'll work with applications. There's an order book, and applications will say, I'm willing to pay 70 cents on the dollar for the block rewards. And a validator will say, yeah, I think that's a good deal. I'll take that, right? And so now the validator is getting paid as a function of that exchange. And in turn, that 70 cents on the dollar that the application is paying, that basically means the chain is subsidizing 30 cents on the dollar of spend for the application. So the application gets increased distribution. And rather than the application pocketing that, right, it has to go to users that are either using the application or providing liquidity into the application or really providing value to the chain tangibly in some way. And that's really where the name proof of liquidity comes from. And the final leg of this process is users in their delegation to validators, right? That validator gets 70 cents on the dollar, in the same way that a liquid staking token in a normal chain allows you to revenue share on the validator's block rewards and from the chain inflation. In proof of liquidity, by delegating to a validator, you are able to share in that revenue exchange that the validator has with an application, right? And so instead of having kind of like a bi-directional system with proof of liquidity, you're really involving all of these parties simultaneously.
That's very cool. So I have a question for you, Captain Jack Barrow. Like, because you have two separate tokens, will that help you make Bera a token with finite supply and not inflationary? Because a lot of the people, they're always asking, like, how can I get yield on this token? How can I get yield on this token? As you know, all of the major blockchains, they give yields because the token supply is inflationary. And even though, for example, Ethereum promised to be deflationary, as you know, that didn't happen, right? It's become inflationary again. So is there a way that you guys may be able to manage that supply on the Bera side?
Yeah, and this is something that I would expect to see kind of updates on as we work through proof of liquidity v2. But I think like one of the kind of medium to long-term goals for proof of liquidity will also be to have what I will call like smart economic policy, right? Where the problem with a lot of chains is that if your fundamental business model is based off of consumption of block space, and the only way to get to net profitability is to make block space really, really crowded and expensive to use, that's like a model that has fundamental flaws, right? Because the second you start to get to good economics for the chain, the same way we saw when ETH was ultrasound money, the chain is unusable, right? And so you actually need a different method for creating value creation and economics. And if you have that, you can actually create a model for inflation on the economic side that is a proxy of the value actually being created by that model rather than as a downstream side effect of it.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that answer. And I would love to bring Bera Rodman in here. Can you tell us, Rodman, like why you decided to build on Berachain? How was the experience so far? You know, if you want to tease Captain Jack Barrow, you can tease him as well. You can be very honest, but I'd love to hear why you decided to build, obviously, Kodiak Finance on Berachain.
Yeah, I mean, I think so if you go back to when we started, which was about 2 years ago at this point, I think there was like a narrative forming around these like more memetic and degen chains, right? I think there had been other app chains that were created within like somewhat the same light, but very different in execution, right? And one of the things that I noticed was not only is Berachain really good at like crafting community and kind of crafting this memetic nature that we've all come to love over the last couple of years, but they're also able to attract like very serious builders, very serious institutions, and I guess like just people that I feel like matter in crypto. And I think other app chains and kind of like degen chains were not able to capture this as well. And then on top of this, like since day one, Berachain has focused on like the builders and the general ecosystem that is ultimately going to bring a lot of value to Berachain, right? If you think about like just like blockchains in general, without like the applications and without the communities that are built on top of them, they're just very fast databases, right? And Berachain has been extremely supportive of Kodiak and, you know, been really a sounding board for us for the last 2 years. And I mean, looking back at it, I really wouldn't build anywhere else, I think.
That's very, very cool. And I'd love to talk about Kodiak Finance in a bit, but Captain Jack Barrow, I hope that makes you happy. Joe Star as well, you are, according to Mindshare and according to a lot of the KOL or content creator tooling that we've used, one of the most active when it comes to researching and creating content about the Berachain ecosystem. As a matter of fact, Joe Star here alone has 2.8% of all of the Berachain ecosystem mindshare, which is very, very high. I would love to hear from you, Joe Star. What made you want to research Berachain, and was there anything in particular that attracted you?
Yeah, I guess it's all about the fat app thesis. I really like application being in the center of economic model, and I think Berachain put the app layer in the center of consensus. So this and the incentive game, that's what really excites me about Berachain. I love the vibe also. And I try to educate people because there is too much PTSD from DeFi Summer 2020, liquidity mining era. It's very different. So I try to, educate people about where this emission come from, why you earn so much APR. That kind of things.
Very, very nice. Captain Jack Barrow, I know you have a meeting coming up very, very soon. If you want to go, you can go, brother. But before you leave, you have to promise the community that every time there's an awesome Berachain ecosystem project, you'll introduce them to SwissBorg so we can support them and our community can support them as well. Is that a pinky promise right there, Barrow?
Yeah, man. Look, like as long as the SwissBorg community rides for Berachain community will ride for SwissBorg. It's quite simple. We like to think Berachain is an ecosystem where you get out of it what you put into it. There's no free lunches on Berachain. You know, if an application isn't incentivizing, they're not going to get to participate in proof of liquidity. If a user isn't using an application, they're not going to get to participate in proof of liquidity. If a validator isn't working with applications, they're not going to get to participate in proof of liquidity. And so, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about kind of that mindset of lifting people up collaboratively, forcing everyone to work together. And so, yeah, I do have to jump off for another call here, but thank you again for having me on. And it was a great time getting to talk people through.
Thanks so much for being on the show, and catch you very, very soon on Telegram. And I would love to go back to Rodman here, buddy. If you can tell us a little more about Kodiak Finance. Obviously, this is a project that may interest the SwissBorg community. If we list you, if there's some sort of launchpad or anything in the future. So I will pull up your website, and if you want to navigate anything in particular or share anything in particular, yeah, please do not hesitate.
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, I mean, Kodiak, we're Berachain's native liquidity platform, and we like to say that we're the #1 place to launch, trade, and LP any asset on Berachain. And so we have a pretty diverse product set, actually. So we have our core kind of products, which is the full range plus concentrated liquidity AMM. On top of this, we have the Kodiak Islands. And these islands are automated liquidity positions built on top of concentrated liquidity. And they really obfuscate a lot of the complexity that comes with providing liquidity on the AMM. So you get a lot of the benefits that come with a concentrated liquidity DEX. And you get that in a managed or like a seamless and managed way, so that you as a user don't really have to deal with any of the complexity that often comes with like managing these positions on your own. And actually, the introduction and kind of the combination of the concentrated liquidity AMM with our ALM side of things is what made us eligible for proof of liquidity. And so when we started off the project, we ultimately wanted to find a way that you could have concentrated liquidity on Berachain and also still use or still tap into proof of liquidity and the kind of rewards and benefits of that. Typically with a concentrated liquidity DEX, you as a user are returned with a non-fungible token, and this is a unique token that represents your position. However, when you use our islands, you are actually returned with a fungible token. And this makes it so they're completely compatible. They can then be staked within Berachain's reward vaults. And if you see here, you can actually get some of the BGT, the BGT that would be earned on every block. And so this is really like our core. These are really our core products. On top of this, we have some more experimental stuff. So we have the Kodiak Panda Factory, which is kind of our version of Pump.Fun. It makes it really easy to launch tokens on Berachain. We've also gone a step further and enabled like complete customizability of this product. So you could actually create new tokens. You could pair it against Borg, or you could pair it against the SwissBorg token. And you could also completely customize the bonding curve. So you could set a custom starting price, a custom ending price. And it's really just like a developer's playground for launching new tokens in a seamless way. On top of this, we have a Telegram trading bot. I think throughout the last couple of years, we saw like a lot of adoption with these Telegram trading bots and just making it easy to trade, whether it's on Solana, Avalanche, BSC, and whatnot. And so we've built our own that's native to Berachain. That's called the Panda bot. We run a couple of validators on Berachain. We currently produce 5 to 6% of all the network blocks. And then finally, we have the Kodiak option suite, which brings on-chain options to Berachain.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize that you guys had so many like features and functionalities. Any questions, Nicolas or Joe Star, that you guys want to ask our dear Bear Rodman here? I think you're on mute, Nico. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of like, so here we described a bit like, you know, the product and and what you're doing. But like, why did you come to Berachain to build your DEX instead of any other ecosystem, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. With proof of liquidity, it's a pretty interesting mechanism because rather than all of the block rewards going to validators, they actually flow to applications, right? And so what this means is that if you provide liquidity on Berachain, you can actually earn some of the network incentives for doing so. And I mean, initially, and even today, if you look at BEX, they only offer full range liquidity. And so there was really this like kind of hole that we could, or this gap that we could fill with bringing concentrated liquidity to Berachain in a proof of liquidity compatible manner. And so that's exactly what we did with the CLMM as well as the AOM side of things. And then, you know, like we've been in the ecosystem for so long, there was clearly gaps in other products that we could build, and we just kept expanding, right? I think for myself, you know, like I'm a degen meme coin trader, and so I thought Berachain really fit that ethos. And you know, like we build products for degens, we are degens.
Super
Very
cool.
cool. And just like because it's the same thing, like in a sense of like you described the present and a bit what like you're doing. What's the direction and what's coming next for Kodiak?
Man, so much stuff, right? I think like we've I mean, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, our entire focus would have been on meme coins, right? And building products to enable these traders to really get the best experiences on Berachain. I think since the goalpost has moved a bit, right now we're very focused on just like building on top of proof of liquidity. So we just recently introduced auto BGT, and what this means is that most of the trading fees that are generated on Kodiak are actually rerouted as bribes within proof of liquidity. And so we released that last week. The second round of rewards just went out this week. There was over $400,000 in trading fees that were rerouted as bribes. And so we're pretty focused on like kind of the yield side of things right now, and just making sure that there's a lot of opportunities and different ways to generate yield on top of Berachain, whether that's new stable coins, whether that's generating additional yield on top of your BTC and your ETH. And then also like potentially making that even easier with like, for example, integrating that within the Panda bot and making it possible to farm through our Telegram trading bot. And so like, yeah, I mean, we've definitely been focused on a lot of like yield generating products. I think that's just what a lot of people are wanting to do on Berachain. But we're also just making sure that Kodiak is integrated with all sorts of solutions, from cross-chain swaps to more like regulatory-esque like products and exchanges like SwissBorg, as well as a ton of centralized exchange products. And just making sure people can like, if you're trading on Berachain, it doesn't matter if you know about Kodiak, but at the end of the day, you'll probably still be routed through Kodiak.
Very cool. Very cool. And so would it be fair, like just to summarize everything together, Bera, Rodman, that Kodiak essentially is like Radium on the CLMM side, like a Meteora for LPing plus Pump.fun all in one?
I think that's a fair analogy. However, I would say like, and you're absolutely correct. Like you could think of Kodiak as like a pump fund plus Radium, plus like Arrakis. So it's like Uniswap plus Arrakis plus pump fund. But where I think I take like a lot of inspiration and would like to be compared to is something more like Robinhood, right? Where you are like you're kind of like a WeChat for consumer finance. We're kind of like WeChat for Berachain.
Super
Very
cool. One last question from me, Bear Rodman. Can we get an airdrop for the SwissBorg community if we help you guys out? I'm putting you on the spot here.
You never know. It might be happening behind the scenes. We'll see in the next month or two. The SwissBorg community may or may not get that.
Amazing, bro.
You heard the alpha, everybody.
Yeah, I'm trying to, sorry to corner you up like that, bro, because you're getting the community excited, right? And don't forget, bro, we also have a very cool coin list like Launchpad in case you want to do a community round and involve Europeans for go-to market. So yeah, it was amazing having you. Go for it, buddy. Go
I was
for it.
going to say SwissBorg plus Kodiak will be the number one way to maybe trade on Berachain through the Europe regions, right? I think it's really cool that you can come on SwissBorg, you can access like 16 different fiat currencies, you can trade any token on Berachain. I think that's really, really exciting, and I'm like super excited to keep building with you guys. And I'm also just really excited to see this in action. And you never know, like I might be holding Swiss francs, I might want to trade those. Like really any European fiat, I think to bear asset is like a really great combination. So
Yeah, please send us your community members who are in Europe to come join the SwissBorg app, and we can help them in staking as well. If you guys are offering, as you said, LPing and staking in the future with good yields, that is our forte. So, Bear Rodman, it was amazing to have you. Won't keep you longer. Josta, can we keep you just maybe 5 or 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, buddy, for coming on the show. And the community is excited to hear more about Kodiak. We'll do some posts and showing more of the examples online on how SwissBorg has integrated you as the back end and us the front end, and how the world will be a better place.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time as always. Chat soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
See you.
All right. And now, guys, our last section here, once again, we have a great researcher. And Joestar is maybe thinking, because you have such good X posts, I think a lot of the people out here at SwissBorg are wondering, are they going to be bullish Berachain or not, right? A lot of people are curious, right? They're wondering, is Berachain going to beat some of the legacy chains in the future? Are they going to surpass the Trons or the Polkadots or all the old first generation, second generation blockchains? Do you want us to pull up your X? How do you want to structure this?
Sure. Yeah, great. That's perfect.
Okay. So, but generally speaking, you can
while
be
Alex
very
is doing that, I just had like a private question for like all the French speakers, and that like know who is Joestar. When the Benz token?
When what? Sorry.
When the Benz token? Like dans ma Benz, Benz.
Oh no! It's about JoJo. It's an anime. It's not Joestar. I'm sorry, man. Yeah. I'm sorry.
There's nothing
it's
to do
culture,
with,
but no.
Joestar.
I'm too young, man.
See, Alex and myself are so old that like we're the same generation.
Yeah, me too. I was thinking Joestar as well. But then I realized it's an anime character. My bad.
Exactly.
My apologies.
Yeah, sorry.
So, Joestar, like, be as honest and as objective as you always are. But if there's any particular X where you want me to scroll down to,
scroll a bit. Yeah, here. Yeah, so just above.
Just above. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. That image. I try to make it simple for people to understand where come from the yield, because a lot of people really think it's like a Ponzi, or I don't know. As I said, it's like liquidity mining. So here you can see that I just put LST provider, so Berachain, infrared, and it's all coming from validators. That's how Jack Biro explained it, but I think it's well put here. So you see that it just going down to the user, there is some bribes, pot de vin in French, and that's how you get so much yield, because there is a lot of incentives, there is a lot of bribes, and there is few TVL for now. There is not that much mind share. That's why it's really interesting now, and all of that is going to bring a lot of liquidity to Berachain. So better DeFi. A bit better application, better revenue. It's like it really bootstrap all the ecosystem. So, and it benefits users. That's what I like. It's like a bit getting what we had in 2020 with DeFi Summer, but we don't have all this liquidity mining and emission from thin air. So yeah, I think that's a good explanation, but it's very complicated.
Great. Any questions, Nicolas, for Joestar?
Yeah, no. Like I find the graph pretty self-explanatory, but like we completely get it that like it's quite complex also. So I think it's perhaps good to move on Perhaps we can share that link with our community so that like people that are interested can go there and read your post.
En plus, c'est en français, donc encore mieux.
Yeah.
Are there any other posts that you want us to stream through?
I don't have the post, but if you look at June, what's really interesting is that you can see that for now it's quite a success. There is some emission in BGT, and for now there is only 10%, 5% of mint. They burn it, so they mint Bera, and that means that a lot of people are staking BGT. They don't want to sell it. They don't want to burn it to get Bera and sell it. So I think it's a success. If you type BGT in the search bar, you're gonna find it. So that's something I really like to see every day. Just to see what's going on. If you go just a bit down, that graph, red and blue. So you can see that there is very few BGT burn. That means that people don't want to, extract. They just want to stake, going forward, and they don't want to go out. That and TVL going up on DeFi Llama, that's the kind of thing that proves that it's getting traction, even now when everyone is scared and don't want to participate.
And Joestar, because there are two tokens, right? Obviously, there's the Honey and the Bera token. Like it's kind of, it kind of divides your heart. It's some people may be wondering like which token should I buy and hodl or stake, and which one not. Like, is that a difficult question to answer, or?
Not really. There are three tokens. There is Bera, BGT, Oni. Oni is just a stablecoin. So Bera, that's the one you want to buy if you want to speculate. BGT, you can't buy it. You cannot. No one can buy it. You have to earn it, by providing liquidity or being a validator. So you can earn BGT by providing liquidity, then burn it to Bera and sell it. But if you want to, speculate on the traction directly, that's Bera. Easy as that.
Fantastic. Amazing. And anything else that you want to share with us, Joestar, relative to your research? Obviously, there was a little bit of drama recently. We saw some politics happening with one of their main projects. I think Henlo, there was some sort of issue there where they decided not to stay native, but, be part of Bera, but also go cross-chain. But any things that you think that could be on the more weaker side or people should look out for?
That's very interesting because Henlo get refused a reward vault. That's where emission are going on LP. So you ask for a reward vault to the team. In a few months, it's going to be the governance. And Henlo just tried to get one, but it was more like a vault. It was not like LP, and it doesn't include Bera. And the team behind Berachain really wants that everything is paired with Bera because it wants to bring, value to the token. So it gets refused, and I think it's fair. We cannot get everyone a reward vault because if you do that, all incentives are going down. People doesn't want to bring liquidity. So I think it's really fair. It was just a big actor, so it make a lot of FUD and everything. But I think the decision was fair. I prefer that. So
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Joestar, for joining us, for being patient, for listening to the Bera ecosystem. So to sum it all up, do you see potential? Are you excited about what's going to happen with the advancements of the Berachain ecosystem?
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of traction. I think we can see, because there is so much APR and it's still a quiet ecosystem for now because of the market. I think we can see like DeFi season on Berachain. I think it's still short term. We cannot see like 500% APR for years. It can't work like that. So, but for 6 months, maybe you can see a lot of, a bit degen, a lot of activity degen, and that's something I like to see because it creates culture, like on Solana. You can see it on Solana. That's the same thing, but you don't use meme coin. You're using DeFi. So I really like to see it.
Amazing. Well, let's hope we do get the DeFi summer again. That was nice, right, Nicolas? I remember when we were
offering that was good
34% APY.
Yeah.
Single coin
Great time.
staking, DeFi lending, that was so juicy. Yeah. You think it's going to come back then? You're positive that these type of yields will come back to DeFi summer, Joestar?
To be honest, it's already on. You know, if you go to Berachain, it's like 500, 600 APR. You can compound again to 700 APR. So it's already there. It just people are too scared or doesn't understand. But you know, it just needs the spark, and I think it's going. Just the spark. Yeah.
That's exactly it. The spark for the rockets to start launching to the moon. Merci infiniment. Thank you so much, Joestar. We hope to have you again and again, because it's good to have someone who's a little more objective and not as biased to comment on the ecosystem. And if we do an update for the community, yeah, we'd love to have you again. Yeah, Nico Konutz saying thank you. Claire seems happy. Everyone is happy to have you. So you're welcome to the SwissBorg community anytime, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. All right, so Nico, on va se faire la fin. Alors, we're going to continue to the last part, guys. Before we leave you, so we've gone over a little bit over time, so 15 minutes extra. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed what we were doing today, but let's go back and maybe we can do a quick summary. Does that sound good to you, Nico?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So everyone remembers the city that we've made, and this beautiful DeFi that is, instead of flying from one country to the other, it feels like DeFi is all together, all combined, the whole entire world at walking distance. And I just wanted to say, Nicolas, because I think a lot of the community members are wondering, what is the role of the Borg token within the multi-chain MEX? How does the Borg benefit from the multi-chain MEX? Well, if you guys understood everything up until now, essentially with the smart engine, you're able to travel like better than direct flights, right, Nicolas? It's almost like crossing the street rather than, flying and stopping into many different countries, a layover here, transit here, connecting flight here. And the way I'm trying to explain it to the Borgers is essentially that by going premium, for instance, it's kind of like a Star Alliance card. And you can see here with the little book, because you're getting discounts, right, on these flights. You're getting perks as in extra yields.
Yes.
And it's even better than a Star Alliance membership, because this membership, you can sell it in the future, right, Nicolas? Essentially, you can go premium. And if you're not happy anymore with our global DeFi airline agency, then you can just sell it. But do you think this is the right analogy to explain that the Borg token and the premiums is kind of like a Star Alliance membership where you can travel across these worlds?
Yeah, 100%. We have like our various ecosystems that are like very isolated, and we are making the trip between them easy.
Exactly, guys. And so far, as you all know, we have roughly 1/4 of all tokens staked in premiums. But I really, really think, just as Claire says here, that it makes sense to go premium, guys, especially when the market is down, because one day, if you don't want to use it anymore, you can sell your premium. You don't have to pay for it, essentially. So, and then for the Borg token holders that are hodling more Borg than over the premiums, and help me here, Nicolas, but essentially Aurélien was saying that all of the alpha rewards, where you get privilege access to, like staking for Eigenlayer, the recent Bera ETH, Bera BTC staking strategies that, as you know, will have multiple airdrops. Those people who have more than the premiums, essentially they get access to alpha deals, right? Potentially maybe Kodiak today, or these exclusive staking vaults. Does that make sense as in how we connect the MEX to the Borg token?
Yeah, it's just like we're always trying to make like more benefits for the community that is with us, for sure.
Amazing. And I guess that was my last message, such everyone to understand once again what we're doing here, the multi-chain MEX. We're building the NASDAQ 2.0. And the beautiful thing here, Cotillon, Suji, Dam, Nico T, is that Marcus, Nulian, you guys are all a part of this new movement. And hopefully, if you missed the beginning, please go back to the beginning of this video and look at and truly try to understand why we're doing what we're doing and why Nicolas and his amazing engineering team are building the NASDAQ 2.0 and the multi-chain MEX. And I must say, Nicolas, I feel like this is not the end, right? I don't want to spoil too much, but
It is
this
not
is
the
not the
end.
last.
And hopefully we're going to have a next Twitter space soon.
You heard it, guys. I don't want to FOMO, but Borg token holders, once again, Nicolas said it. We're not going to tease too much, but just
Not going
realize
to
that.
tease too much. It's just that like we're working on some ecosystem that are not on DEX, that are not, sorry, on centralized exchange anymore, and really bringing you massive alpha. That's what I can tell you.
Yes. So guys who are not premium yet, go premium with your Borg. For those who are already premium, consider getting the top perks, which will be airdrops through early staking, which will be alpha deals and all that cool stuff. So thank you so much, guys. Nicolas, you've always been amazing on these streams with me. And I hope to see you hopefully in the before 60 days. Is that possible?
Yeah, I hope that like within a couple of weeks we have the next one.
Couple of weeks. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're putting too much pressure. Don't say that. There's 2,162 people, 2,170 people watching us live. That's a lot of pressure, but it is FOMO. It's good FOMO. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Nico.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.